Welcome back to just another solar podcast with Luke Beattie. That's me. No Karl Jensen. He's absent today. He's at his stepdaughter's 18th, but we do have industry legend Nigel Morris. G'day, mate.
G'day, mate. Good to be back. Live from the shed tonight. Thought I'd try a different venue.
You've got the live wire in the background there and a whole bunch of toys.
Whole bunch of toys, mate. You gotta have a shed, I think. You know, who doesn't love a shed?
And it was great to catch up with you in person last week in Brisbane for the Smart Energy Council's event up there. And it wasn't the biggest show, but there seemed to be a lot of key people there and a lot of interest in announcements there, Nige.
Yeah, I agree, mate. It was a good little show. You know, some of these little shows are smaller shows. I mean, I think I heard someone say there was nearly 1,000 there over the day. So, you know, that's all right. Yeah, it was a really good catch up with lots of people, and it's sort of all done and dusted in more or less one day. So, yeah, great little event, mate. Good to see you.
Yeah, and there's absolutely chock-a-block the next couple of months. Obviously, the big one is All Energy next month. And there's a lot of events around that. So the day before, AWISE has a full-day event, which was excellent last year. Obviously, the Solar Cutters event. And they've also got some roadshows coming up, Nige.
They do, yeah. They got one. I think it's in Victoria somewhere. I can't remember where it is, but there's one in Newey that I'm looking forward to. We're going to get up there. There's a bunch of us heading up and see some people on the way as well, and see some people around that event. So that'll be good. Newey's a real, there's a bit of a hot spot around there for that sort of, they go south to the Central Coast and right up into the Hunter there. So some really, really good solar businesses around that part of the world. So that'll be fun.
And I noted that there was another conference earlier this week in Canberra, and that was the Australian Renewables Industry Summit. And as part of that, really interesting thing, if you don't know, in the US government has committed $370 billion to a program called the Inflation Reduction Act. And what that's basically doing is turbocharging the move to renewables, but top to bottom, so including manufacturing and so forth. So there's a big push in Australia at the moment. And the numbers I saw is that we need $100 billion committed to it. But then at the tail end of that, you'd be looking at generating $300 billion per year in clean export revenue. And also it's going to help accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels, reducing carbon.
Well, there's been plenty in the news about that, when a coal plant's going to shut down, how fast should they shut down, how long should they be supported and all that kind of stuff. And I heard someone saying, it was actually up at the Smart Energy Council conference, we need to get from 3 gigawatts a year to 10 gigawatts a year, right? That's the only way we're going to hit the target. So we've got to 3.5-fold do. You're not working hard enough. Luke. Work far. Do more, mate.
When do you work, Nige? What have you been doing this week?
Everyone's busy. Everyone's busy. There's plenty going on, but we've really got to ramp it up at 300%. We've got to ramp it up 300% to deliver on this, and rooftop solars can do the heavy lifting as usual.
And as part of that, our guest today is related to that because he's involved on the inspection side of installs and quality control, but also has extensive experience doing training. Pat Southwell is from Southwell Solar Inspections, but he was also the technical team leader and technical and compliance specialist for the CEC for a number of years. You've done some other things in the industry, but welcome to the podcast, Pat.
Thanks very much, Luke. Really great to be here. And with the long list of esteemed people you have in the industry, very privileged to be on this podcast. Been listening to a lot of them in the car lately too, a lot of old ones.
Okay.
And, really interesting. Some of the people you've had on are just, captivating stories. So really happy to be here.
Because you drive around a fair bit, you cover regional areas. Just give a brief about that for those who aren't from Victoria, about the Solar Vic scheme and exactly what your role is.
So I'm a licensed electrical inspector, which I obtained in August 2021. Before that, I was, solar installer and worked at the CEC, obviously. But the LEI part is, I'm using an acronym here, licensed electrical inspector. We refer to them as LEIs in Victoria. So every solar installation in Victoria needs to be signed off by an LEI. And that basically means the electrical contractor that does the job assigns the inspection to an LEI once it's been commissioned. And then the LEI will go out, check that it's all done to standards and guidelines and the ESGRs, the service regulations, all that sort of stuff. And making sure it's all done correctly. And once that's done, there's the right-hand side of the electrical safety certificate is signed off by me. and then we're all good to go. And then we have a compliant installation in Victoria. So that's on every single solar installation in Victoria.
Which really sets a high bar. I mean, having every system inspected, but also are there additional inspections on top of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's only a small percentage of my work. So I do solar Vic audits as well. That's probably a large percentage of what I do too. I'm a CER auditor as well, CER inspector. So I've been doing that for a couple of 3 years now as well. And there's a few other little things, like there's some other private clients I have that just want, it might be a QA done on their system, checking the compliance is all done correctly. Other government departments, which is a little bit smaller. But yeah, I do a lot of driving around. So I've actually just come back today from the Latrobe Valley and Gippsland. I spent the night out there last night, and that's pretty typical for me to sort of spend a night or two every couple of weeks or so, checking out country jobs and that sort of stuff. And it's pretty good. Get to see a fair bit of the Victorian countryside.
I just wanted to go on a quick tangent here and throw to Nige, because you mentioned the CER, and there's been some pretty big news in the last week, Nige, from the CER.
There has, mate. They announced a big prosecution, actually, a civil case, which they won, which cost the solar installer who did the wrong thing more than $250,000, and a couple of people involved, actually. Big fines, one of the first big civil cases they've won, and, it kind of talks to the fact that the Clean Energy Regulator is watching what's going on very, very carefully, and that they will take action if people are doing the wrong thing. So the thing about this industry that always gets me is that there's a ton of money to be made. We need to do 300% more of it, for goodness sake. And if we all do it properly and follow the rules, we all win, right? Everyone wins. You make some money, you send your kids to school, you pay your mortgage, you employ some people, we give people clean energy, we save them money, just do it properly, for goodness sake.
And the nature of their offences, I think it was more to do with fraudulent STC creation, not having installers on site. Is that right?
It was. Yeah, it was in that case. And that's one of those sort of subtleties in the rules that's emerged over the years, and there's been lots of rule changes, and it's a really hard job for installers to and particularly installers to keep up with all those rules and regulations and everything else. But you've got to do the right thing, and at the end of the day, the CER will hold business owners accountable for compliance, right? So you've got to be compliant and you've got to do the right thing, and for goodness sake, there's plenty of room to do it right.
Agreed. What's your thoughts, Pat?
Yeah, look, I mean, you can tell the CER are really taking the industry. It's been the compliance and all the things that need to happen with the installers. They're really taking it seriously, and I believe that has lifted the bar a fair bit. I suppose they've installers having to take selfies on site and all that sort of stuff. Like I suppose it's a little bit annoying, but at the end of the day, we're really trying to cut out these people doing the wrong thing. And I think the CER clamping down is a really good thing. They do tend to focus a lot on the fraudulent activity, I think. I personally would like to see them focus a little bit more on the electrical safety side of things, like a lot of the other state regulators tend to do, like Solar Vic or ESV. But look, what they're doing is great, and all power to them, I think.
I was going to ask you, Pat, I mean, you've been doing this for quite a while. You've been around the edges. I worked with you when you were, the chairman of the IRG?
Yeah, I was the chair of the IRG for around about 3 years.
It was a bunch of installers who get the opportunity to get feedback directly into the CC, and Pat headed that up for ages. I was lucky enough to be on there for a little while and give him my 2 cents worth. But since you've been focused on the inspection stuff, though, Pat, I'm really interested. Have you seen changing trends? Have you seen the quality of workmanship and compliance go up, go down? What have you observed?
Look, most definitely it's gone up. So I suppose the best story I have with this was when I first started doing Solar Vic audits. I think that was in November 2020. That was at a time where Solar Vic had been around for a couple of years, and the bar was being raised a fair bit. And every time a standard changed or something like that, or Solar Vic decide to put the clamps on or whatever they decide to do, you could see the level sort of go up a little bit. We were doing just the Solar Vic audits between November, and then I think I didn't start doing CER inspections until June, July of 2021. Now, the thing is, the Solar Vic audits are done sort of 3 to 6 months after the installation, And the CER at that time, they were doing them 12 to 24 months after the installation. So if I have a look at when I did my first CER inspection, the quality of that job and those first few I did were much less than the ones where I was doing the Solar Vic audits. So you could just tell in that 12-month gap where they're doing their inspections, the workmanship had just lifted a long way. So look, from what I found, it's gotten much better and it's getting better and better. Look, we have our hiccups when there's standard changes, where things happen and, installers are still learning the rules and all that sort of stuff. But where you can see they're deliberately trying to get around the rules and that sort of thing, you can tell that's nowhere near what it was sort of 2-3 years ago. So it's definitely getting better.
If you have a 12-month to 2-year lag to inspection, there's every chance it might be an installer who's aiming to do the right thing and he needs a bit of guidance from the inspector. But if you've got that lag, he might have installed potentially hundreds of systems by the time that actually catches up.
Yeah, look, it's just one of those things where with the CER, where it was that 12 to 24 months, because I think, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think the rule is they can't be inspected less than 12 months after the STCs had been claimed. And I think you've got 12 months after the installation to claim STCs, I think. No. So it can be up to 2 years. But yeah, look, you're 100% right. What actually makes it worse, if you are doing inspections up to that 2-year mark, that 24-month mark, it's also got spiders and shit all over it. It's starting to get dirty and it actually looks worse. So the installation's already starting to degrade and, you start to think about maintenance that 2-year mark as well.
What about other states? I've heard the argument that you've got inspectors who are running solar businesses and potentially competing against the companies whose systems they're auditing. You hope that inspectors operate in good faith, but, you could argue a case that that's not always the best scenario.
Yeah, for sure. So, being a CER inspector, we have to sign off any conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest. You need to state that they don't exist. If I do have, whether it's a competitor or it could even be one of mine in Victoria, because I've got my own clients who I do inspections for, I'm not allowed to inspect their work in a government program. So there is conflict of interest rules in there. Maybe slightly too tight in Victoria, I think, on the Solar Vic program. But that's just my personal opinion. I can go into that a little bit if you like.
Go for it.
Yeah, just that.
It's a podcast, man. You go wherever you want, Pat. Go for it.
It can be a little bit frustrating for me being a Solar Vic auditor. I also do prescribed inspections for a number of clients. So a good example of that is, let's say, like I do a lot of inspections for Total Solar Solutions. I think you've spoken about them on the podcast before. Reese and Christine run a magnificent show. Absolutely.
Yeah, we had Christine came on when I was over in.
I heard that. Yeah, she was
over for Enter Solar and had a chat. Yeah, and hung out with Reese as well. They're great people.
They're great people. They run just a magnificent show. They do. I'm just so happy to do their inspections. Because I do work for them, I'm not allowed to do any of their Solar Vic audits or CER audits. Now, look, that's okay. That's all good and well. But we're actually in an environment where there is a shortage of LEIs. Yeah. And it makes it really hard for me to be able to, grow my LEI business and then also have conflicts of interest from Solar Vic audits. Yeah, it just makes it really difficult. Like, I would like to think I could be professional enough to be able to still be impartial like that, but I can understand why the rule is in place. But we're trying to grow this industry, and if we're trying to, I keep you guys banging on about tripling by 2030. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. So we're going to need a lot more LEIs. There's already a shortage of LEIs. There's not that many that are active in solar because it's quite a difficult space to be in. It's quite regulated. A lot of the old guys are just not interested in doing it because, they don't want to get on the roof or they don't want to, it's just different to, going and signing off switchboards and that sort of stuff. So they're not interested in doing it. If we want to accelerate this transition to electrifying everything, we're either going to need just a hell of a lot more LEIs or, I don't know, maybe looking at something like relaxing the rules on the conflict of interest. Having said that, I do understand why they're in place.
Interesting. I saw rooftop isolators made the news again this week. There was a spate of fires apparently recently up in the NT They've got the regulators all fired up there, and there was a bunch of work going on. And ABC actually published a really interesting article which listed the stats on almost all states except New South Wales. Apparently, New South Wales doesn't give a shit. They don't publish the stats, which is annoying. There wasn't a heap of them, but there was certainly a notable amount, and it kind of raised the same issue that we've all banged on about for ages, and that is that you've got to do maintenance on these systems, and the older they get, the more you've got to pay attention to these things. And there was a system in Brisbane hit by lightning yesterday as well, apparently, which was on the news, which scared the bejesus out of everyone when everything caught fire. But it was a direct hit, apparently.
Seen a few of those though, Nige. Before you go into the question, I saw a ground mount array recently that was struck, and you could see on the corner of the module where it was struck, there was a little bit of a burn mark, but it went right through and cooked J boxes, cooked all the PCE, everything was toast. But the panel that actually got struck didn't look too bad. Really interesting.
Yeah, it just passed it through, right? Yeah, and all the electronics are what cop it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're a certain inverter manufacturer, you'll always throw back to potential lightning strikes rather than on warranties. Did I say that? Are we snipping that?
Yeah.
Sorry, your question, Nigel.
No, leave it in. So, and rooftop isolators, is that an issue that you're coming up against regularly, Pat?
Not really. Now, since we've had the disconnection points come in, I'm seeing 90% of the jobs that are being inspected now are disconnection points. So the only time they're using rooftop isolators now are cathedral ceilings, not a big roof cavity, hardly any roof cavity to run. So some of them actually go external now on the roof. Not seeing many at all. And it's kind of funny because the ones who do try the rooftop isolators, they stuff it up. So they're the ones they sort of have to go back because there's all these new requirements as well, right? So you can't just install a rooftop isolator the way you could in 533 2014 or with the amendments as well. There's larger shrouds now. There's the drip valve put in as well. And
those shrouds are big as a cricket bat. They're enormous,
they're massive.
Right?
Oh, they are absolutely massive. They are really, really big. Yeah, cricket bat, it's a good explanation.
Really? Have they grown that much?
Oh, they're huge.
Yeah,
absolutely
they're really
huge.
big. Really big. I think it's, look, don't quote me on this, 550 mil roughly, I think.
Yeah, I think it's to do with the angle from the edge of it to the corner of the isolator or something.
Correct. It needs to be, they've sort of aligned it with other equipment in AS3000. It needs to sit in like a 30-degree soffit. So it needs to sit within 30 degrees. So you sort of sit the isolator high up in the shroud and, potentially it doesn't need to be quite as
just
wide.
Explain, so that's when you can't get your 600 millimeters from the ceiling, right, to run your cables?
Yeah, your 600. Yeah, that's right. Your 600 from the ceiling, or you're in an internal wall and you can't get your 200 mil drop zone. That sort of stuff. Yeah. You
so people are running conduit along the roof instead of using rooftop isolators. Okay.
Yeah. Well, are you talking? Yeah, that's right. You mean externally?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm certainly seeing that. Not really fixed to the roof so much. A lot of the time, what they'll do is they'll just extend some rail. So they'll just use some solar rail and then like some steel cable ties or even some saddles onto the rail in their conduit. I actually think it looks quite neat. Like, I don't know, I'm a bit of a solar nerd. I don't mind seeing panels and I don't mind seeing neat work. I actually think it looks pretty good. You could see why some people might look at
those zip ties.
Ugly.
Look at those
exactly.
zip ties.
Yeah, exactly. What's the rail on my roof?
What's the most common problem you see? What's the biggest issue that you reckon's still out there, Pat, in terms of installation quality?
So probably two questions. There's probably two parts to that question. I suppose the way I'd answer it would be things that are concerning and things that are not quite concerning. If you put it into the categories, what sort of Solar Vic do, and they have like rectification required, and then they've got like improvement identified. So if you look at those two categories, rectification required is you're still seeing a lot of locking screws not being put into the side of inverters, locking into the brackets. And, someone could just come and lift the inverter and take it off the wall, or it could fall on a kid's head or something like that. That's really common. Like we're still seeing a lot of that.
Wow.
For me, it's just a bit lazy. Definitely seeing a fair bit of that. What's the other rectifications required? This has sort of popped up in the last sort of 12 months or so. I think it's with the advent of thinner panels, right? We got panels now. I heard you talking about them in a podcast. Getting them in. You got to get them into containers now. You want to get them as thin as possible. Stuff the 30 mil panels. Let's go. What are we at now? 26, I think. I think I've seen 26 mil panels somewhere. Anyway, that'll get you an extra, 3 or 4 panels in your container. They're still using the same size end clamps. So the
Right.
end clamps, they're basically sitting pissed on the panel. They're bent. Yeah, they might feel like they're reasonably secure, but it's not the right equipment to be installed. You've got to use the right size end clamps to fit the modules that you're using.
Or universal clamps. And I know installers don't love them as end clamps, but having the right size clamp every time, having one line item versus multiple different size clamps when the frame size is always changing, that's also a benefit.
Absolutely. And whilst we're on the roof, the other main one, still seeing installers trying to get away with a tile roof with a tile bracket, and the dickheads put one screw in, like one screw for the tile foot. You just can't do it. I check as well. Like I check on every single job. I don't know. Maybe they think we don't check as inspectors. I don't know. Maybe some inspectors don't check, but I will go around and pick a selection of tile brackets and make sure there's at least two screws. And if there's not, I'm putting it as a defect because that's just damn lazy. So yeah, see that a little bit too. They're probably the main ones as far as the rectification required. With the stuff that's improvement identified, so stuff that's not likely to be as much of a safety issue. I think the main problem there is with the disconnection points and people just not quite still understanding exactly what's required. You're seeing a lot of disconnection points put more than 300 mil away from the warning label. Also seeing only one conductor at the disconnection point. So I find that quite funny because it's almost like they've gone, oh well, we don't need a rooftop isolator anymore. Let's just omit that, and we'll just make all the panels all joined together, and we'll put a label under one of the MC4s is. This is really easy. So we see that a little bit. Yeah, just labels on conductors not being in the right spot. So that's probably a big one. A lot of labeling. Yeah, there's a lot of labeling issues which are not quite right, and I see that as something that's quite easy to get correct.
That's a lot of detail stuff. I saw your friend and my friend Richard Trapp, who's a New South Wales inspector who's bounced around for ages, and he was complaining today about people making changes to the inverter settings to get around voltage dropouts.
I saw that. Richard talking about that.
Yeah. Is that something you see?
Yeah, a little bit. Not a massive amount. I do check the inverter settings when I do an inspection. I don't do an extensive check though. Like the main check I do is that it meets the Australia A region, which is what we were in Victoria. So I check that, I go through the settings and make sure it meets that. If it meets that, I'm assuming all the other settings are fine and it hasn't been stuffed with. Where you see there's a problem is you go through the settings and you find it says like 50 hertz because that's when the settings haven't been put in properly, haven't been uploaded by the installer, or just they tried to stuff with them. So yeah, we definitely do see that a little bit, and that's one of the things we look at in the CER inspections too. They're getting us to go through and check these inverter settings. I think pretty sure they pass the data on to AEMO. Definitely seeing that a bit. It's something installers really should be getting right. But yeah, I saw what Richard put in there, and I think it's quite a bad thing. It's going to make the rest of the industry look really, really bad. If we're going to be having these issues where potentially, I think he mentioned in his post something about 280 volts were coming out, something like that, because of the inverter settings weren't correct. Like, man, that's bad. 280 volts coming out as a grid voltage. That's going to damage equipment. That's going to cause all sorts of issues on the grid.
Let alone responsiveness. We've actually anonymized data from the tens of thousands of sites that we can see across Australia previously when there have been events, and looked at a really nice big statistical sample of inverters and said, how do these inverters respond when this event occurred? And the difference would blow your mind. There are lots of regions, and the stuff that's going on down in South Australia and what's turned into the dynamic export rules and the emergency backstop mechanisms, all those types of things are all partially driven by the fact that inverters need to be set up the right way to respond the right way to protect the bloody network. And if you mess with that, it has implications for all of us. So, yeah, again, I think, a lot of the data I've seen has shown there's a trend over time to everything being better and right. And, the better inverters, we won't name them either. I don't know what you were talking about, who you were talking about before, Luke, but we'll get back to that. But, some of the better inverters, they can push firmware updates out, right? So they can make sure that the inverters are kept up to date and that if there are changes that need to be made, they're made, and they can check compliance with the standards that need to be in place. So, it's the little things in this bloody industry, isn't it?
Is that the sort of stuff you can see, Nigel, like with your data from solar analytics, like those sort of things that Richard was mentioning?
Yeah,
If it does go up to
yeah.
280, you guys got full visibility of all that, don't you?
Yeah, it depends on the tech that we're looking at, but
Mm.
yeah, and we've actually one of the coolest things I ever saw done with our data was a map of Australia with an event that occurred, and we had all our sites mapped out on it, and they changed from green to orange to red as they went on or offline. And one of our data scientists actually animated that, so we can actually see clouds passing over a region, for example, and we map it that way. But you can see an absolute trend in some technologies where they just simply don't respond the way they're supposed to.
Now, Pat, what about batteries? You've mentioned just general PV installs. What are you seeing with battery installs, good and bad?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask me about batteries because I wouldn't say I wouldn't say I'm the battery guru. Sorry, I think Nigel's taken. You're the guru, aren't you? You're the solar guru from what I've seen. Anyway, um,
It's all about perception, Pat.
yeah. Okay. Look, batteries. It's certainly not my strong suit. So I've had a little bit to do with Grid Connect battery systems. Looked at a few power walls and that sort of stuff. It's all pretty simple. Some BYD with Fronius, that type of stuff. Tell you what, as soon as you start getting into like off grid and those sort of capabilities, yeah, I feel like I'm a bit out of my depth. And that's when I'll either knock a job back and say, no, nah, don't want to do it because I don't know enough about it, or I'll call in for help. I'll call in another inspector or speak to someone else who really knows about batteries and get them to go through with me, whether it's the manufacturer's instructions or what it's supposed to be doing, certain conditions and all those sort of things. Well, as far as actual batteries go, though, I feel I'm not too bad and with the 5139 and seeing what's happening with that, with with battery locations and restricted zones and all those sort of things. Certainly seeing a few more of them come online, definitely more than sort of 12 months ago. Feels like there's a lot more than there used to be.
Speaking about out of your depth or things you're not sure about, I saw here that you signed off an inspection for a project with a capacity of 2.6 megawatts and felt you're out of your depth. How did that go?
Wow, so that was amazing. I got asked to have a look at this 2.6 megawatt job, not far from the city, and thought to myself, wow, this is insane. So I think it was about 7,000 panels at the time, 24 inverters. Went out and had a look at it and thought, yeah, okay, look, I can work through the DC side of things. A lot of it, from an inspector's point of view, is reasonably similar. You've got to do all your normal tests, your earthing continuity, all of your insulation resistance, all those sort of things. I'm like, yep, okay, I can handle that. It's just on a large scale. And then started looking at some of the AC stuff and the switchboards that were in there and the amount of current. Yeah, all of those things. I absolutely shat myself. So I called in some help. There's another LEI. His name's Dale McLeod. I got him in to come and help me. So we sort of went through our LEIs together. We were sort of studying together. He worked with, might have been Gemini, I think, one of the DNSPs in Victoria, did a lot of their stuff and didn't really know much about solar at all. So I called him up and said, mate, I really need your help here. You're good with big fault current switchboards. They have like 3,000 amp main switches and this sort of stuff. I really need your help. And I am so glad that I did. We went in there to do one of the inspections because I had to do multiple inspections to sign this off. Some of the questions he was asking, I would never have even thought to ask. He was asking about all the different impedances of transformers, how close it was to the high voltage transformer, all these type of things, because it was an HV customer. Totally blew my mind about some of the stuff with the heavy current switchboard. So, yeah, learned a lot. But still, to be honest, I wouldn't sign off one of those myself. I'd be getting help in again to do that.
It's another world, that big scale stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. Like I did my electrical apprenticeship, just in normal, just house bashing. Did it with my dad. Just putting power points in, doing switchboard upgrades, all that sort of stuff. And then worked my way into a few other things, light commercial and that sort of stuff. I never really looked at switchboards that big. Every now and then we'd do stuff that was a bit bigger than domestic stuff, but Geez, it's another world, and it's scary too.
It is scary.
Some of the
I was chatting to someone the other day who's involved in some of the large scale stuff, and I learned something after 30 years. You can still learn stuff. I love it. I never knew that some of the really, really big scale equipment that comes in for these solar farms, transformers and super high voltage, large inverters and all that kind of stuff, when they ship them, they fill the cabinets with gas. I'm going to be wrong. It was either nitrous or as nitrogen or something like that. But they fill them with a gas to prevent corrosion from occurring during sea freight. And one of the rules that needs to be taken into account when you first commission these devices is when you open the door, you have to expect a big outrush of gas. And there was a guy working on this site who did not know that and actually took a gut full of gas and tragically that night passed away. And I didn't even know that was a thing. And he obviously didn't. And it's one of those things on those large scale sites that's, it's serious stuff.
There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy coming from these transformers and switchboards. And yeah, it's full on. I think they were talking about, when I was speaking to Dale about it, on this side, he mentioned something about fault current potential being 28,000 amps, something like that. Now, I've never seen 28,000 amps blow up, but from what he was saying, if you had a fault current that size, it would basically, if you were standing there, it would blow the doors off the escutcheon and you would be toast. There'd be nothing left of you. Pretty scary stuff.
So, Pat, the issue around LEIs, you brought that up earlier on. Tell us what else is flowing through your mind around the need for LEIs and the compliance standards that they've got to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. There's a little bit happening in this space. What I found, I suppose, a bit flabbergasting the whole time I've been thinking about getting my LEI is that when I got it, you obviously you need your LEI to sign off solar installations, but you don't need to have any experience in solar. So you need your G class, which is your general class LEI.
For real?
And yeah, for sure. So this is the thing, man. The people I was training with to get my LEI, there was only one or two of us who had any solar experience at all. It's funny because the only reason I really wanted to get my LEI was to inspect solar. I'm not going to be going and signing off, mains upgrades and all that sort of stuff. And again, out of my depth, I just want to do solar. I'm interested in solar. I love the industry, and that's where I thought I could contribute best. I had to go back to study to get my LEI, and I ended up having to go back and learning about all these, larger switchboards that I did in my apprenticeship, and just learning about some, I suppose it was some basic stuff you do when you get your A grade. I had to go back sort of 20 years and relearn a lot of it, but obviously learning it at that next level as well, because LEI is seen to be, you're meant to know more than A grades as well, and there's a bit more on your shoulders. So I had to go back and learn all of that just to get my LEI. And then in my LEI exams, there was next to no reference to solar at all. I think on one of the exams I failed, there was a couple of panels or something, and an inverter that we had to sort of pick the faults out in. And I thought, oh, beauty, this is great. I'm gonna get heaps of points here. There was hardly any faults in the solar side of things. So I'm like, oh, that's no good. So anyway, what I'm getting to is I think ESV have recognised this, and they sent out a paper in I think it might have been in June or earlier this year, and they were looking at a different class of LEIs to sign off solar. So it's going to be the renewable energy class of LEIs.
Is this Victoria only?
This is only Victoria, correct?
Solar Vic.
Correct.
Look at him go.
Yeah.
Leading the way.
I love it.
Yeah, it's good. So what that means is there's no details come out from ESV yet, as far as I'm aware, as to what existing G-class LEIs are going to be grandfathered through into this new system. What they have said is, I think it's from the 5th of April 2024, is any solar installation is going to have to be signed off by someone with this renewable energy certification or endorsement, whatever you want to call it. Issue is, I haven't heard yet how you actually get this endorsement. So apparently there will be some people getting grandfathered through. There's been some figures thrown out, like the ones that are already experienced will be grandfathered through. And I think they've said if you're doing more than 104 certificates in a year. That's 2 per week. The chances are you might get through. But the thing is, like I mentioned earlier, I'm doing solar Vic audits, so I may not necessarily do 104 per year. But anyway, hopefully with the experience I've got, I should be grandfathered through. And it will be any new LEI who gets their LEI after April next year will need to do a new set of exams on top to get their renewable energy endorsement as well.
Yeah, good.
So, look, it sounds good. But I suppose what we spoke, I've listened to a lot of the stuff you guys have spoken about in your podcasts, and we seem to love a shit show in solar, don't we? You know, we seem to see a deadline and go, oh, look what's happening in 2 weeks. Oh, fuck, we better do something about
We
that.
actually get withdrawals if we haven't had a hard deadline for, a few months. We need some other crisis to pop up just so we feel normal.
Yeah. So okay, you look at we're going. So let's go 2 weeks before that. Let's go say the 15th of. Let's go to the 15th of March, 2024. All right.
Not that far away, Pat.
It's not. Where are we going to be at? Like, there's already a shortage of inspectors.
Yeah.
Who knows? Are ESV going to say, oh, let's have a bit more of a grace period on this? LEI is just going to go, oh, stop yous. I've got this certification. I've gone from $300 an inspection. Oh, I'm going to charge $600. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen?
So where's the opportunity then? So for more LEIs, is it guys who have had enough, been on the tools, they've got the knowledge, they've still got a passion or know-how in the industry? Is that where the opportunity is? Yep.
Yeah, I think so. So there's stuff that you need to do to become an LEI. You need to have been an A grade for more than 5 years. That's the main sort of prerequisite. I think they also look at to make sure you haven't set anything on fire or haven't been to jail. I think that normal stuff. I think that's part of it too. But yeah, that's right. I mean, that's how they're going to get more people in from just A grades who are wanting to get off the tools and get into inspecting. And I'm actually surprised there's not more LEIs. Like, it's a really great job. I love it. Like,
well, how did you get into it, Pat?
I just got into it it was actually a professional development opportunity from the CEC. As part of our package with the CEC, we had a professional development budget. So I hadn't used mine for a couple of years, and I'm like, I keep hearing about these shortage of LEIs. And it was actually a conversation with my old boss at the CEC, Sandy Adkins, who said, we need more LEIs. This is a thing. It's an aging workforce. So I thought, oh, well, I'm going to have a crack at it. Yeah, basically used it as a professional development opportunity. The way it sort of worked out is that when I started doing all my exams and all my study, it was the start of COVID. So I did my course in, I think it was June or July of 2020. And, I think there was like a week or two between the first and second lockdown in Victoria where we were allowed out. And funnily enough, that was when the course was on. So we actually went out. Went out and I did my course, and then we were back in lockdown. What I didn't know, though, that was the easy part. Doing the course was easy. And then there was the exams, which were one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, was getting through that period and passing those exams, because it was nearly impossible. It was really, really difficult. And
wow,
look,
it's a high bar. That's good.
Look, when you say high bar, that's one thing. I was really struggling mentally, in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, who wasn't?
Yeah. Well, I suppose we had all the COVID stuff, but then I had on top of that, I just kept failing these exams. And yeah, and the thing is, you pay like $600 to resit it. You have to wait 60 days to resit. So this is the thing. You got to get 75% on these exams, and you find out you get like 72 or something, and then you got to wait 60 days. So you think, oh yeah, I'm good to go. I know my stuff. I know where I stuffed up. Wait 60 days. No, you just got to wait.
And also, this is amongst lockdowns, and particularly being in Victoria, which they were particularly bad, affected most people's mental health in one way or another. Yeah. And then you've got failed exams, and you've got to wait.
Another hopeless Victorian.
Well, that's right. Exactly.
Can you explain what a lockdown is to the WA people listening?
You poor bastard. That's a tough role, Pat. Well done.
Thank you. It was really tough. I feel like it's one of my biggest achievements, like not just professionally, but just in my life to be able to overcome what we did. Like the last time I failed my GPRAC, when I found out I failed, I just sat there. I thought, I've nailed it this time. I have nailed it. And then I just sat there. Once I got my result, came through on a Friday afternoon, and I got 68%, and I just burst into tears. And
Oh,
my wife came in and was like, "Oh, did you fail again?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I just failed again." And I was about to chuck it in. I was seriously about to chuck it in. I'm like, all
wow.
this work I thought, I just can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. It was too much. It had taken up so much of my life. Like, I was spending nights in my garage. I made up a board. I was testing it. I made sure my testing technique was 100%. Had my head in the standards like all day and all night. My wife was sick of it. Joe was getting so annoyed, and my kids were
Wow.
too. But yeah, I'm really happy to get through, because I know some people I know in the industry are still really struggling with it. Like, really smart people who,
Wow.
smart solar people too. Hopefully there's a few coming through soon. There's a couple actually, I think, that have just got through.
It's a
But there's
double-edged sword, isn't it? Because you want that to be really really high bar, but you don't want to make it so inaccessible for people who make just, dumb errors that they can't get through when they actually do have the skills and the knowledge and are willing to learn, like people like yourself. I'm putting in that bucket, Pat. Luke, I'm gonna make a suggestion that we put some vouchers up for some merch. For all the people who want to do LEIs and get rolling in Victoria and help them, Solar Vic particularly, keep the bar so high. We'll put some vouchers up for some merch. You can get Pat, just so you know, you can get T-shirts, stickers, hats, shower screens. And
You
my
can get
favourite
doona
is
covers, Nige.
You can go to bed with us every night, Pat.
has it got Karl? I know Karl's not with us today. Has it got his face on it? Because if it doesn't have Karl's face on it,
It's got Karl's face on it.
Karl's. There's different images, but there's one of us all on the solar coaster, and you can have that full size on a bed.
I did show it to Liam Ricketts from Supply Partners, because they've got the Solar Coaster podcast. He didn't point out the plagiarism, but I'm sure there's a hint of that, Nige.
We're all on the solar coaster together. That's the good thing.
That's right.
I'm spewing Karl's not with us today, because I don't know Karl all that well. Like, I've run into him in events and that sort of stuff. But the first sort of interactions I had with Karl was online, like a lot of us were, when, Cutters first started, or Crap Solar or something like that. And it was actually myself and a work colleague I used to work with, Anthony Gretsch. We used to work together at Mark Group, and we used to
good guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a top guy. We used to be private messaging each other, thinking how we're going to wind up Karl for the night, because he used to be really easy to wind up, and it looks
used to be. He still is.
He seems to have chilled out a little bit now.
He totally has. Yeah.
He has. I remember I had a good chat with him in Sydney. I must say, I do like the guy now. I'm not sure if I did back then, but probably we're all a bit too serious back then, and I do really like Karl. So I'm spewing he's not here to share that story.
He's got a depth of knowledge, and we miss him this week.
Because the other thing is that he has a lot of knowledge, but he also will agitate if he sees fit. And I think the industry, even companies, you need agitation. If we're all just holding hands and just flowing down the stream, you don't get the same outcomes as having some agitation, asking the questions, locking horns, and actually getting an outcome. So, mate, I want to say congrats to you for your persistence, and it shows a lot about your character. One of the other things that came up prior to us recording this was just about mental health challenges. And I think everyone at some point has different challenges along the way, but you've faced some as well. What do you have to say about that?
I'm really sort of keen to talk about this, and I want to thank you guys for speaking about it in just about every episode. I almost feel like the stigma is really getting broken now, because we're speaking about it just normally now. So, yeah, I've certainly had my mental health issues. A lot of mine have been like pretty physical as well. So I've dealt with anxiety and panic attacks. Yeah, being in situations where I sort of just need to really get out, or, my heart rate goes up to like 160, 180 beats per minute, and for no real reason. Sometimes it's, it might be because I'm nervous or whatever. I'm not really sure, but it's been other times when there's been no real cause for it, or nothing I can sort of point my finger on. And I remember one of the main times this happened was at All Energy. It was the first time I spoke at All Energy. It was in 2017, and I was on stage. I was wearing my Apple Watch, and I looked at my heart rate, and it was sitting at 160 beats per minute for a good 10, 15 minutes. And I was sitting there, and it was the guy I was working with at the time, Luke Pickles, was sitting next to me, and I'd spoken to him about some mental health challenges I had, and I just sort of pointed to my watch, and I'm like, check this out, man. 160 beats per minute. And he's like, oh, you're all right. I'm like, oh, I don't know. That sort of stuff has happened to me on numerous occasions, whether it be on a plane, on a train, just for no real reason sometimes, and having to deal with it. It's been a real challenge, especially throughout my 30s, I suppose, was a real big challenge just to get through life because of how much it was affecting my day-to-day life.
You found ways to manage that and cope with that. So what advice would you give to people who are going through a similar thing or whatever their challenge is?
I'd definitely say just speak to people about it, try and normalize it. I haven't really spoken to almost anyone recently who's gone, oh, what do you mean? Just you're a dickhead, just harden up or whatever. Like, people just don't really say that too much anymore. So if you're worried about people saying that, I wouldn't worry too much about that. And if they're the sort of people that you're hanging around with, you probably want to find a new support base, I would have thought. The other thing I would suggest is, this has worked for me. It may not work for everyone, but I learned this in listening to a lot of self-help podcasts and that sort of stuff about trying to overcome it. I face up to it. When I found I'm having these panic attacks or whatever is going on in my body, don't run away. Stay there. Just be present, be calm, take a deep breath. And I've sometimes found, I've used it as a bit of a superpower. It's definitely happened before at installer nights when I was at the CEC, where I'd be up and I feel, it's coming on. And then I'm like, okay, reset yourself, face up to it. Let's see what's gonna happen here. And then I don't know, after a few minutes, it does end up sort of going away, and you sort of warm into it, you lean into what you're doing. And sometimes they've been some of the best speaking gigs I've ever done. And I'm really happy that I didn't just run away. I don't know if that's advice for anyone, but that's what I feel.
That's great advice, Ben. That's great advice. It's, every one of us faces these kind of challenges in one way or another. And, that's a great example of how to just go through. One of the lessons that you've kind of described that I kind of worked out along the way, which is the same, is that it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. Nothing is in life. You can drive yourself into this frenzy of it's going to be a catastrophe, and it's rarely as bad as you think it's going to be. You got to keep your wits about you. You got to keep your head on. But
what's that saying I heard recently? This too shall pass.
That's absolutely right. And I suppose I'm grateful to have the support network I do have around, because without them, I don't know if I would have been able to deal with this type of adversity. Like, I've got the most amazing wife, Jo, who has seen me in these dark moments and seen what has happened. And she's held my hand through the whole thing and really helped me deal with this. And it's, absolute credit to her.
So, Pat, there's not time for much more. I'm just going to throw around quickly and we all get to make a comment, ask a question, or wrap it up. So to you, Nige.
Two things, mate. Firstly, in last episode, we mentioned that there was a bit of a comp-on between Karl and I to see who had the most words. I believe when the crap was edited out, I won.
You had the most words, hands down. But if we left in the stuff from Karl that wasn't edited out, it would have been pretty close, neck and neck.
Less crap. There you go. Thanks, Karl.
We miss you, Karl.
Secondly, I just wanted to actually say how, excited I am. I work with a bunch of people who are just, I'm in this software space that's just mind-blowing and moving so fast, and the whole control space and monitoring, we're way beyond monitoring now. It's into the control space, and seeing how the technology is evolving and the solutions are evolving. And I work with an amazing bunch of data scientists and geniuses, and we launched our retail metadata thing, relaunched it this week after a ton of work. And that's the thing that gets me up actually every day at the moment, because it's so exciting what I can see that we're going to be able to do with this hardware that's already installed. It's got these amazing capabilities that are just starting to emerge. So that's my wrap for the week. Is I'm excited and eternally grateful for the geniuses that I work with.
Well, it's good to be excited about what you do for a living, mate. If you can't get excited or enjoy some of it, you're in the wrong job.
You're in the wrong
industry, wrong company. Pull up stumps, go and find something that you can be passionate about.
Yeah, exactly.
And Pat, thanks for coming on today, man. Appreciate your input. You're going to be speaking at All Energy again too in the Solar Masterclass. And also people will see you around the traps. If you're in Victoria, it might be inspecting systems, all sorts of stuff. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
I just want to make two quick little points. So first one I just want to make is I just noted that I was sort of feeling sick driving through Gippsland today and through the Latrobe Valley, seeing all the coal-fired power plants. I actually drove right up next to a couple of them, and I'm just waiting for the day where we don't have to worry about those anymore. That's the first thing I want to mention. And the second one, I just wanted to have a little bit of a love in. So really appreciate you guys having me on. But my main love is for you, Nige. I've been looking up to you in the industry for over 10 years. And I think the last time I sort of said this to you, I was probably maybe 15 schooners deep at All Energy at the Cutters event and maybe a couple of martinis and that sort of stuff. So I just want to let you know how much I look up to you. And if there'd be anyone in the industry who I'd want to be like, it's you, Nige. I love you, mate.
Bless you, mate. Bless you. That's way, 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 way too kind. I think it was 17 schooners deep. I think your wife was trying to drag you away. But we had a great thing. We had a great conversation and a good time. And, the thing that I always like to remember is there's a bunch of good people in this industry, mate. I'm just a bastard who won't go away. And there's a bunch of really, really good people. And I actually, there's been a lot going on in the industry in the last week or so, some of which will start to emerge over the coming weeks, no doubt. But one of the great things about it is there's a lot of great people who do get together and collaborate and help each other and support each other. And, that's what makes a good industry. So, here's to all the good people.
Yeah. And not to harp on about it, but it's probably one of the biggest news stories that's been in the industry for a long time. We can't talk about it now. Chances are it'll be next episode, but Nige taking the lead in the industry. So Pat Southwell, Southwell Inspections, and many other hats that you wear. Thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate the input.
Thanks very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
And Nige, pleasure as always. And Karl will be back.
Good on you, mate. Yep. Look forward to having you back next week, Karl.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.